Hi all. As the beady eyes can see, the cylinder heads weren't on, which was supposedly going to happen last week. Fortunately, the day job's been getting in the way. I've worked the last 7 or 8 days, so it's been a bit busy there. But anyway, cylinder heads, which I thought were ready for assembly, turns out they weren't. We had obviously checked the actual springs because I hadn't gotten the correct information on them. People I bought them for couldn't give me the exact bloody number, so we had to check the the distance, or the pressure, sorry, created by the springs at valve open and valve closed. We were happy. Eventually they had at least supplied us the right springs. I think that's PAC or PAC 1237X spring, which should give you over 700,000 lift, which is what we needed. So we were happy the springs were okay, and we thought, oh, we'll put them all together. I'd also done the dry build. We did the cam timing setup with helper springs, which are basically these little babies. Obviously just so we could check the geometry. Obviously it doesn't produce quite as much pressure as those, but it has enough to do the timing setup. But we didn't have installed at the time were the valve seals. Obviously sit basically on top of here. And what I never cottoned on to and didn't really think too much about, but now I know more than I really wish I hadn't, is when this gets installed on top of the valve guide, it makes the top of the valve guide theoretically about 3 millimeters taller. And as it turned out, that 3 millimeters was too damn much, because I didn't like the look of them. I somehow think that wasn't 700,000. So when our springs on here, and basically when the actual goes to full 700,000 lift, the bottom of the retainer here was not just touching, was like a millimeter or so into the seal. So it would have destroyed the valve seals the first time I turned it over. I caught it early enough, but it still was a pain in the ass, because I then had to strip the heads down again. So I took the heads completely apart and had the top of the valve guides machined down 2 millimeters. This caused another problem, because the valve seals didn't have 2 millimeters clearance to basically the steel spring retainer, or the seat, shall I say. There wasn't 2 millimeters clearance there. So now, when I try and push the seals on, they hit here. So I thought I was going to have to grind these off to make sure when this is pushed on, it doesn't hit here. But luckily, a bit of a plug for Brian Tooley Racing here. Brian Tooley Racing had a little valve seal kit, which I bought purely by accident. I won't actually say I was smart about this. And when the seals came, they're slightly shorter. So realistically, I don't have that problem. So that was pure by luck. I thought I was going to have to machine a little bit off of these. I don't know what the hell you call them, but they sit basically just there and take the pressure of the springs, destroying the aluminium. But we were okay. So had to have the heads machined. So they machined these down, put the new taper on the edge, because the edge of the thing is tapered to precisely fit, or at least gives you a guide fit for the seals. So finally, we have our valve distance height, which is 1.82 plus the 20 thou, or minus the 20 thou shim that we've put in there. So then that makes the valve closed, or the spring height, should we say, when the valve's closed, of 1.8 inches exactly, which then with the 700 thou lift goes to 1.1, obviously. And at 1.1 inches, I am about 60 thou away from coil bind, and you need to be at least within 100 thou. So I'm 60 thou now from coil bind, which is great. So the spring control and spring frequency is a little bit happier. Also something I didn't know beforehand. So I thought, you know, if you've got lots of extra spring pressure, extra spring spring distance left, it wouldn't be a problem. Turns out, no, you need these coils virtually all the way compressed together at full lift. So basically they can't jolt around and spring. That sounds stupid, but whatever. Basically, if that's crushed all the way down to virtual sort of 50 thou away from being all the coils touching, then it produces less problems for the spring and for valve control. So anyway, yes, so head one is now assembled. So we've got our titanium and Inconel valves in, and we are all ready to bolt this baby on, thank God, at least. Seems to have been a very long time. So yes, one more machining op, one more delay, and unfortunately that meant that's going to be another week, because this is my only day off for like 12 days. So I'm spending it putting the heads together and putting them back on the motor. So yes, progress on the chassis itself. We've thrown some bits and pieces on that basically don't get in the way. We did finally measure exactly where the steering rod goes to the bulkhead, cut that, so we've glued the bulkhead on. We finished making the access panels for the high pressure fuel pumps, and for the level probe thereon. We will polish these at some point, but right at the moment that's not an emergency. And we'll sort of polish the panels inside the car. And obviously that side is completely on. Unfortunately, I've run out of the correct rivets for this side, so that's not on. I've used black rivets where it's a already powder coated panel, but inside the car we're going to polish. So if I put the black rivets on there, basically you'd end up just polishing the anodize off eventually. But yeah, threw the dash on just because I had a mate come round, they wanted to see what the dash looked like. So, but yes, it's everything's in the way. Ordered a bunch of connectors for the motor so that we can start wiring it up. There was a few connectors that on the GM loom that we're probably going to take apart, strip and butcher. On the GM loom, their ECU must have a better noise reduction system in it, because both the crank and the cam sensor are not using shielded cable. In fact, there's no shielded cable on any of this loom, which aftermarket wise and motorsport wise is a big no-no, because you don't want to pick up any interference from another cable going back to your sync or reference sensors, as in the crank sensor here and the cam sensor that sits in the front plate here. So we bought pins and plugs for those and a bunch of other stuff. Now figured out about the throttle mass flow, how we're going to run the engine. We're not using MAF, we're using throttle mass flow. Something also I've had to learn about the last few months. Got all the plugs and the Bosch sensors for those, which are actually high sensitivity pressure, like a MAP sensor as such, but they also have a temperature sensor into it. But you don't run the MAP sensor in the throttle plenum, you actually run them in the intake before the throttle. So when the throttle's closed, basically the pressure will spike and the temperature will spike, and the engine will know that basically it's shut. Yes, short term, long term. Managed to get the fitting here, that's the in-feed oil to the block. Feeds this main gallery here, but effectively this main gallery comes from, there's a block in there somewhere. Oops, sorry. There's a block in the front there, in the back side behind the rear seal cover, that allows you to select whether you want this oil feed to go to the front or not. Now, obviously we don't need the oil field to go to the front because we don't have an oil pump there. The oil pump's fed from here. So what we do need is a oil feed for the turbos. This is a dash 10, which is a tad on the large side, because I only technically need twin dash 4s to turbos, but it gives me a big enough supply that I can tee off of here. Probably produce a slightly shorter fitting because it doesn't need to be that long. I can tee off of here to the turbochargers, and this is all filtered and cooled and everything oil anyway before it goes in the motor, so we don't need a separate filter because it's pretty much straight in and straight out. That's on that. Yeah, I'll do another update hopefully next week, Monday, Tuesday, after I've had to work another 4 12-hour shifts. But anyway, yes, so heads, a little bit boring, but it's been a bit of a journey, and it's had a lot of various bits and pieces of machining done to them to get them to be as close to as near blueprinted perfect as I can. Yes, there we go. So place is a bit of a mess, but once things start going back on the car, I can tidy up, and once the car's rolling again, this table will be cleared, and then we can start laying out for the loom. Oh yes, one last thing for everybody that's managed to hang on to the end of the video. The cables arrived. So what you're looking at there is close on $3,000 of cable. It's all from a company called ProWire in the US, but we have more than enough to do the car, and probably the Lotus on top of that. This is the TXL cable, so obviously it's the thin wall cross-linked. If anything to do with wiring, that basically means it's about as light a insulation as you can get. And we have sizes from 0.5 mil to 2 mil. The larger sizes we obviously don't need a huge amount of. Anyway, yeah, so cable has arrived. A bunch of connectors have arrived, so we are moving on. And I'll be glad to get to the wiring stage, because then at least, well, it'll be all bolted back together. Anyway, thanks for listening if you got to this far. Give yourself an A+, because I know I can be boring occasionally. Anyway, speak to you soon.